We have gardened for a long time. We've done it, some successful ones, some unsuccessful ones, like all of you who've gardened. And Rod and I are so interested in gardening, and we've just felt this stirring from the Lord that it needs to look different than it has in the past. And we had the opportunity last year. We walked into this grant for young entrepreneurs. And we thought, young, yeah, sure, that, but they took us anyway. And we had an opportunity to travel all over the country and see things growing. Most of it was market gardening, CSA, growing for restaurants, whole different kind of gardening than the family type. But we saw gardens in California. It was amazing, all the different approaches, and it just expanded our thinking a ton. Then we came back, and again, just this stirring in our heart that we needed to look at this with a different perspective. Just completed Master Gardener training, and that was interesting too, and we realized how much we don't know, because what we know is our experience, and there are so many things out there. And the difficult with that was that it also included like flowers, ornamental plants, trees, turf, that kind of thing. And our heart is growing for food. So we have taken from that and gleaned a lot from it and put together an evolving package of gardening information, which is fun. So this is the first time I've had this slideshow together, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. Okay, number 2. Why garden? If you don't come out of here convinced, then I have failed. But I am so passionate about this. Everybody should know how to grow something, even if it is just to put you in touch with where that food comes from. But where else are you going to get the highest quality food? I mean, picking it, eating it the same day is the very, very best. Great family activity. Little children particularly enjoy it. It's good exercise. And this thing that is stirring in our hearts right now is that it is a necessary step towards sustainability. So we're kind of re-looking at the way we are doing things to see if they're sustainable. And I do want to tell you, with this why garden thing on the healthy food, in this master gardening class, we had specialists from the University of Missouri doing their piece, and the guy on pesticides was doing his presentation, and he was not anti-pesticide at all. I mean, he wasn't like an organic gardener. None of them really were. He was simply talking about safe use of pesticides, and he said that the things that our country has banned go to South America, and those fruits, grapes, strawberries, things that are imported from Chile, that's what's sprayed on them. Yeah, interesting. So our consumer demand for year-round fresh fruits and vegetables are what's driving that. And in order to get the product that the consumer is requesting, and again, those pesticides are banned in our country. So I just thought that was real enlightening coming from that source to say that. Also, you'll save money in gardening. Now, maybe not initially, but eventually you will. And less yard to mow. Okay, now we're going to get some fun pictures. These are our grandchildren. Like I said, children love to garden. Those are blackberries on the right. Okay, next one. And they're fighting over the green pumpkin. I don't know if you can see it down here. I mean, children love it. This is a classic. This is Rod's grandmother. She was in her early 90s there. And this is actually our garden, but she had one up until she started I don't know, she was probably 90 when she couldn't take care of it any longer. But it was always never a weed, spotless. And when she came to us, it nearly worked her to death because, we had rampant weeds, and she was watering. That was going to be a drought year. We were going into it, and she insisted that we could get water to those plants. So they are hauling water in those buckets in that little red wagon. And I just love that picture. Okay. So to start gardening, the first thing is getting those basics right. Carefully choose your site. You don't want to spend the time, energy, and expense to develop a spot that won't receive enough sun. And I also recommend people look at their space as a whole, because if you start your garden in one spot and then the next year decide, I think I wanted a fruit tree there, you're just overlapping with your work. So really look at it as the big picture. And another thing to watch for is poorly drained sites. those often need work too. So find good sun. Excellent soil is important, but you can build it up. Our soil is not good. We have to build it up. Terry has a line, and you'll probably hear this from him too, but he says, feed the soil and it will feed you. And that's very true. And you can work with your soil. We'll get to one directly related to that in a minute. Stay far away from trees as possible. They'll leach moisture and nutrients from your garden as well as shading it. And then think about your space. What design will work the best? Each has advantages and disadvantages. You may have the person you've heard most. It seems like every gardener has their favorite thing, and it's the only thing. Okay, so you've got to hear from a lot of different people and then figure out for yourself what works best. But there are advantages in the square foot gardening, absolute advantages. There are also advantages in traditional row gardening. It depends on what you're growing and where you're growing it and what your soil type is. And, now in walking out there, just the heat and the horrible, pitiful condition plants are in right now, it's the time to plan for next year, because that's now when it's in your face and real is when it's happening. So I really recommend taking notes, the things that have worked or not worked now, and be thinking about what will work in that space for next year. And what should it look like? There are as many types of gardens as there are gardeners. So let's see some pictures. Okay, this on our tours, this is a market garden. If you have horrible memories as a kid of long rows in grandma's garden and in the hot sun, it may have looked something like this. But this is actually a very busy, it's a Mennonite / Amish sale barn in the middle of the state of Missouri, and much of the produce that comes to this part of the country comes from there. Very, very busy market in the background. And this is a market garden that with tomatoes that sells there. And that whole area, they've just been so successful. They're putting up greenhouses, high tunnels, all sorts of things. And when you see in this Kansas City area, the Amish tomatoes early in the spring, many of them come from that area or somewhere nearby. There are like 3 or 4 of these in the state of Missouri, but that's the busiest one. Okay, next one. And then here's another market garden with a high tunnel. And that's one of the big things that's being used in gardening now. And if you're thinking about large quantities of people, it's something to look into. We had the opportunity to help get in on that. We were thinking about doing it ourselves. And they are quite a project, but the people who have them say they're very successful. They take care of a lot of the wind issues, a lot of the disease issues. They extend the season. The problems with them, wind issues on the plants. The problem with them is there are wind issues. Several of them have had problems with wind blowing the plastic off through this winter, and also with snow load. This one collapsed. And whenever it was January or so. This was like in October we were putting it up, and they had to reconstruct. The framing was fine, but the plastic collapsed. That's a very successful organic CSA type garden, kind of near the Missouri River. It is CSA is used different ways. It stands for community supported agriculture, but in this case it's like people buy shares and they deliver vegetables. So if you cannot garden yourself, there are coordinated community ways you can get access to fresh produce, and that's why I'm showing you these. Okay, next one. This is one of the California gardens. Amazing gardens in California. It was really cool. All of them had to be irrigated. They don't have just random weeds like we have in Missouri. In Missouri, if you don't touch it, it grows up in weeds. Now, there are like 3 pictures from those, so let's go on to the next 2. Look at that, and then I'll tell you the rest of the story. And that, yeah. Well, okay, stop right there. Those first 3 pictures, that is an estate winery / garden. And they have I think a total of 18 acres. Is it 18 acres, 15 employees, I believe, or vice versa. But anyway, full time. And they have their very own chef, their very own, horticulturalist. But just to take care of their vegetable gardens, they had the horticulturalist and 5 full-time employees. So, don't be too hard on yourself if you got a few weeds. That's the reality. This is the contrast. And, the thing is, if you are one that looks at gardening magazines, this is probably what you're comparing yourself with, because you only see the best in those gardening magazines. And I almost pulled these slides out and I thought, we need to be aware of that, because when I'm talking about gardening and sustainable gardening, this is not what I'm talking about. Okay, this next one is okay, one more. That one. That is, the name of it is Green String Farm. This is the farm that supplies one of the finest restaurants in California with all their vegetables. And it's kind of an interesting place, too. Okay, then the next one's a little closer to home. This is Kansas City Community Gardens. And now we're getting down home and practical. If you are in the Kansas City area, this is an incredible resource. They're located near the Swope Park area. They have a publication that comes out maybe just once a year that has their seed and plant availability. But their goal is to help people learn to garden. They have plots there, and that picture was taken it was in June. And this man over watering the garden on the right, he is the most incredible gardener. His was far and above the best of any of them. And these are more of his vegetables. And you can see in the back, they're not quite so outstanding. And then I think the next slide is, those are the community garden plots at the Kansas City Community Gardens. And those are the developed ones over there on the right. But lest you think your first garden has to look like that, these are the new ones. So see, it's a process. You start and you build. But there are some people that are more faithful. Now, the way that works is you pay a certain amount per year. And these are maybe not exact, but they're close figures. I'm thinking it's like $15 a year. And you get a plot and all your water and things are supplied. But you can do memberships in Kansas City Community Gardens. And you get discounted seeds. You get discounted plants, fruit trees, and then the use of a tiller in the spring. So anybody in the Kansas City area, be sure and check into that. On the final slide, I have their website information and some other source information that will leave up that you can write that down if you want to. Great place, great people. Okay, the next one. All right, this is Reagan and Todd's first garden at that house. This is the square foot gardening. And Terry mentioned this book to you yesterday, and some of you have looked at it on the back table. And that's so perfectly set up as an example that I had to take a picture of it before they planted. And I don't have an update. The reports are it's doing very well. You actually see the grid on there. And the idea behind the square foot gardening is you're using all the space. So large vegetables would take one grid space. Small, you might fit 4 or 16 things in it, depending on the size of the vegetable. But what it does is it helps you think of your entire space. You're not walking in the rows. And so if your soil is such that you're building it up, that's a great way to do it. And there are just lots of helps in here. It really is a practical resource. Now, my understanding is they have added vertical growing around this deck since then. That was the very, very beginning stages. In fact, the fence is still down where they'd hauled the dirt in. But I still wanted you to see the example. Okay, next one. All right, this is another thing you'll hear talked about, lasagna gardening. Have you heard of that? Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's a layered garden, and we first tried it. Our soil was bad. We were building a house. We wanted to get our perennials started, and we did this with, it's a layer of wet newspaper, thick wet newspaper to smother the weeds or the grass. Okay, and then in our case, what we did was we put straw on top of that, probably 6 inches. And then we had a source of hot chicken manure, which I wouldn't recommend that you put that on a regular garden, but this was going to sit over the winter. So we just put that on top of the straw and let it sit for 6 months. And then what happens is the newspaper rots and the earthworms come up and it all mixes together. And then we planted asparagus and strawberries in there, and they just did great. That asparagus patch has thrived. And then later, if you need your garden in a hurry, you can't really do it that way. But if you're working now for next spring, those principles apply. And there are books at the library that you can check out. Patricia Lanza is the one who has, she has lasagna gardening, and lasagna gardening for small spaces, which is like container based. Her last name is Lanza. So if that's something you're interested in, those books are readily available. I don't know that they would be, I wouldn't put them up on the level with this one for a purchase, but they have great ideas. So it'd be a good one to check out at the library. All right, this is one we did. This is our son's garden, and we were building a vegetable garden on this side, and we saw that space, and we were like, oh, we haven't done anything with that. This is like probably July, and we thought, well, let's just see if it'll work for you. So they dug out some newspaper, we wet it down, and they had some like compost topsoil mix left over from the vegetable garden. And then go to the next one. And you can see how we did it there, and then edged it out, okay? And then that fall, they planted it, and that's ornamentals. But they haven't had any weed issues. And that's what I always go back and ask people, because, see, that's the dilemma. When you're starting over grass, you either have to remove it, you have to kill it some way. And when you're doing like a suburban garden, that's just kind of a pain, and especially if you don't have a tiller and have to do rental or it remove with a shovel and the ground's dry and all those issues. So lasagna gardening for your base will work for that. I have heard that the thick newspaper, works better than cardboard. People who've tried cardboard have not been as happy with it. Okay, next one. All right. I'm trying to think what happened to... Oh, they're coming. I thought Terry and Grace's were next. They're coming in just a minute. All right, now we're going to go on with removing the grass. That was the point of the lasagna garden. Okay, this is actually at Kansas City Community Gardens, too, and I took a picture of that because in that case they did. They pulled that sod out with a shovel. That is hard work, but that's one way to do it. So you either have to remove it, you can cover it with a thick layer of wet newspaper, which is like lasagna gardening. Or if you're not opposed to that, you can kill it by spraying, like with a Roundup type product. Okay, next one. And then you need the good soil. So you can add compost, a topsoil mix. Depends on your soil structure and what you're doing. If you're working with soil that's already pretty good, you can add some compost, mix it in, add some more. You can, bring in topsoil. And they always recommend you get a soil test first. Sometimes those soil tests are informative. Sometimes they're not. We haven't had a real good level of success with them. They don't ever tell me as much as I want to know. But if you have an established yard where plants have grown successfully, probably you can just build up your soil and go from there. If you have new construction, it might be a different issue, and you may want to get it tested. Okay, next one. And that's that little garden we were developing for them. It was nothing, and they dumped grass clippings there and brought in some edging and thought, we can do something with this. So that's what we did. We moved those daylilies out and just brought in that topsoil compost mix. And the next one, watering. And then this garden was not even planted until the end of June last summer. And then this is toward the end of summer. So they're getting some production out of it. It was a late start. They moved in late, got the idea late. And it's real funny because this is the young man who was in that earlier picture with his great-grandma pulling the wagon. And he went through a time in his life you wouldn't have caught him in a garden. No way. And here he is, getting close to 30. And his wife likes fresh food. And here they are gardening. It's pretty funny. All right. Here we have the people I think that have done the vertical gardening to the max. I've never seen anything like this. I had found a couple pictures online, and I was like, this is not going to work. We need them from the source. So Grace sent me these a couple nights ago. This is in an apartment. And Grace, if you want to interject anything in this, you are welcome to describe any of this. But this is, down here is their growing area, and you'll see it in another slide. And look at the size of this stuff. Pretty amazing. Okay, let's see the next one. Yeah, you can see it from the side there. See, the growing bed is down here. This is an apartment. So if you're thinking, I don't have much space, I can't do much, they grew tons of food in this situation. You can see I'm getting out of my space here, but you can see containers on that deck there too. So the combination of container gardening and vertical gardening, which uses the least amount of space and things are growing up. And these, I'm thinking, are a copy of like that topsy-turvy tomato thing, only they did it in a bucket rather than purchasing that little kit. Isn't that great? Yes, question. Is it squash or is it cantaloupe? Cucumbers and green beans are vining up that. Yeah, you supported the cantaloupe, right, with something? No? Okay. So, warning with cantaloupe, if it's ready and you walk under it, watch your head, right? Isn't that incredible? And that's from the other side. You can see, they're up on this, their apartment is up here. This is the growing area. So that's like a second floor growing area. I just am amazed at that. Good soil. Okay, this is container gardening, and you can't see that quite so well. The challenge is to be creative with containers. There are lots of containers that can be used, and if you look through your garage or barn, you might come up with some things you had not thought about. These are children's swimming pools. Yeah, isn't that amazing? And over there are all sorts of plastic tubs, terracotta pots, all kinds of things. Have you heard of Echo, any of you? Right. Their website has some cool things on it. It's called Educational Concerns Hunger Organization, maybe. They are in North Fort Myers, Florida. And what they do is train mostly third world missionaries in planting techniques to feed people in where they're going to serve. So they have experimental gardens, they have libraries, but one of their things that I thought was real intriguing is they're working with urban gardening now, some too, rooftop gardens, and they use like the children's swimming pools, and then they had used these wicking systems where there's discarded carpet and pop cans and things like that as a base. It is really an amazing creative thrust, and we keep saying we're going to go visit. This might be the winter we actually do it, but they do have a lot of interesting things on their website. Okay, have we broken the mold of what you thought a garden should look like? Hopefully. Back to that vertical gardening before I go on. Anything that can be trained to grow upward will work on that. People will do that with tomatoes too, if you're pruning tomatoes. And there are some varieties that work better than others. So just be sure you read whatever it is you're growing, be sure you read the requirements and the growing conditions for it. And then for the container gardens, those can really be pretty. And it depends on your setting. If you are in a place where it has to look nice, you can really make them look nice. You can mix them with flowers. You can mix herbs and flowers together. I'm going to have some pictures in a minute of landscape plants, gardening incorporated in landscape plants. But when we were in Austin, this lady where I stayed had a grow box. And I have this that you can refer to if you would like to. It's something I'm wanting to put together just for example, but it came out of Texas A&M Extension. And what it is, it's just those Rubbermaid tub type things from, wherever. And the way it's different from a normal container garden is there's a layer in the bottom that is water. And then there's PVC pipe coming through it. So the dirt doesn't go all the way to the bottom. There's that reservoir of water. Because my complaint with the container gardens is they take so much water. And if you're not there and you miss watering them, they dry up so quickly. But they have this reservoir of water, and then it doesn't require so much topsoil in it. And she was growing things on sides of rocky ledges all over the place. Tomatoes were thriving. Anything she had in there was thriving. But she just didn't have much soil. They were on the side of kind of those Austin hills out there and a lot of trees, and she had to move things around to find sunshine, but was doing it successfully quite a bit with this kind of growing system. So people are working it. It is different. The gardens today are very different. So again, when you go home, look at your space. Think about what your goals are. Think about the amount of energy, time you have to devote to it. and then start planning for next year. And I always recommend that people start small because again, in April, those gorgeous days, you just plant and plant and plant, and then August hits and it's like, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? So it's better to start small and take care of it. You saw the productivity that came out of Terry and Grace's garden. It was not a lot of square footage, but a lot of produce because it's well cared for and well watered. Um, Okay, then the next one I think is, yeah, this is that California garden. My little layers of protection row covers are never quite that nice. The PVC pipe lays over and the things blow off, and but this one really looked good. But they're protecting from rabbits there, and each of you will have your own personal critter challenge. Rabbits, squirrels in urban areas, and oh my goodness, the squirrels are just horrendous. And then where we are, it's deer and raccoons, and we had gorgeous early garden. And I mean, we replanted green beans twice, and they just ate them all off. And the sweet potato tops, and they just pulled them out, the corn, everything. So we came back at them, and we tried the human hair, we tried the deer scram type stuff, and we finally just strung electric fence all over the place. I mean, we were just sick of it with all this work for nothing. And then we got a call from somebody wanting to know about squirrels. What do you do with squirrels? So since we are going to be manning that Master Gardener hotline and people are going to be asking us, I thought I'll call the Master Gardener hotline and see what they say. And the guy said, move. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I know. What we did, we started with two. We started one up high, well, it's like 4 feet high, and one like 6 inches above the ground, and something was going between them. So we put a third layer around. We've had some success. We've slowed the deer down, and they've stayed out. We also hung like aluminum foil with peanut butter in the middle of it the first few nights so that they would come up and touch it, and it would, and shock them and hopefully deter them because they could jump it. That's not a thing. Now, I know that we have read about and seen and haven't purchased ourselves that netting, that electrified netting. That's a fencing product that you can put around. I mean, that day we were just like, we went to the farm store and we were like, we're just going to do this. Whatever they have, we're buying it. We're going to put it up and we're tired of it. And like I said, we have saved several things. Now, the raccoons still destroyed our corn. I mean, and we have neighbors who have done everything imaginable. They put their sweet corn in the midst of a whole thing of field corn, and raccoons will take out 2 or 3 acres a night. I mean, it's unbelievable. So we don't call them cute little Bambis and cute little squirrels out in the country. Back to that Master Gardener question, he said first move. And then he laughed and said, some of the things that have worked have been like the hot pepper, cayenne pepper powder. And he said, another thing that sounds really bizarre but has worked for people is to put out a pan of water. Because one reason they go for tomatoes is the moisture in the summer. And if you put water out somewhere, and it has worked for some people. Now, what we found with all these little stories is it'll work for one person and not for somebody else. So again, but try it. I mean, that's not going to cost anything, and it's something you might try. Yes, another question? Fishing line, yes. And then there are the scare tactics that work for some things. And, we had Baltimore Orioles in our strawberries, and they were destroying the strawberries. And we put row cover over them. And then any little place, you'd go out there and the row cover you'd think was intact and the bird would be bouncing up and down underneath it. So it's a constant challenge. I think that's much tougher than the actual growing. The growing's a cinch. The pests are a cinch. It's the critters that we have trouble with. So be forewarned. Yes, another. That's a netting. It's a plastic type netting. Right. The way these work, and that's why it's such a mess for me, is just getting in and out of them. They just lift it over. And of course, remember, they have 5 full-time workers taking care of this. So, yeah, yeah. So it's pretty perfect. Um, I will tell you though, as frustrating as the gardening has been this year, one thing we did is we have a little raised bed with some of the PVC used for hoops, and it's not been successful because you can't tighten anything down on it; it bends. But we have it there, and things just were not doing well. So my Austin gardener friend inspired me with her Swiss chard. So I had some Swiss chard seeds, and it was growing in Austin sun. I thought, well, I'll try that. So I put it under there, and then I put I got at Sam's Club had like an awning type shade cloth. So I got a roll of that and cut off a section and just strung it over the top. It's a real heavy, nice fabric. And it's supposed to hold up for like 15 years, and you can use an outdoor use. So I thought this might work in this, because we've been having, that over 100-degree temperatures, baking everything inside. Just stuck them in there, and it's growing great. And then I had an end of it that was just left out there, and all the cucumbers, were burned up and gone. So I had some leftover seeds and just threw it under, didn't water, didn't do anything, just left the shade cloth laying on it. Checked them last night, and they're up, and they look great. So there's really something to be said for protecting from the sun with some of those products. Now, my thing was, we live in the country, and some of you, that's why I'm telling you these stories, is to think ahead about it, because when I decide I want shade cloth, it's like, do I want to drive 45 or 50 minutes and look for a place to get it, or, wait for delivery? Things just aren't handy for us. And so that I saw, and I thought, why not use that? And it's cheaper than the shade cloth I was going to order. So it's not exactly a gardener's shade cloth, but it worked beautifully, and it doesn't look bad. So keep your eyes. Now is the time to do this. Think about all these little different options, how you're going to protect from this and that. This little system will work great for like lettuces, small plants like that. But of course, you wouldn't stick sweet corn or tomatoes under there. Okay, next one. Extend the season. All right, this is part of our garden. This spring, the reason it's been such a challenge in our area this year, we were having frosts at night up through the 1st of May. And so I wanted to get those tomatoes out. It was almost Mother's Day, and they weren't out yet. And so this is what we did. We used, for our cages, we use old roll fencing that we've been using for 20 years. And we used the trash bags and opened the end, and then raised them up around the tomato plants and clipped them with clothespins. And then as the weather got better, we just pull them down. And the black plastic makes it warmer and then protects from the wind. We just have horrible wind problems in the spring. So our little plants just get beat to death. Now these, I missed it, but I had around them, I used the number 10 leftover cans. And when I plant them initially on broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, put the number 10 cans around it. It protects from cutworms. It protects from wind. And then as they get a little size on them, I pull the cans off. So I'd already pulled the cans off. But this was like the 1st of May, well, mid-May probably, when both these were taken. And we had great cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower. But it's one of those things you've got to get out early in this part of the country, or it just gets too hot. Every year's different. But those are some season extenders that we have done that have worked well. Okay, next one. And it was, yes. Worms or bugs? Worms, those white moths. Okay, you can use a BT, Bacillus thuringiens type thing. It's a natural product that takes care of those easy. I mean, they're just a cinch. And you can just put it all over them because it's harmful to the caterpillars that eat the leaves, but it will not hurt humans, and it's considered organic, and it's just, you just got to stay on top of them. But that is the problem. That's the only thing I have dealt with broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower. Lorelei back there, I'm pointing to her. She's a pro gardener. Have you dealt with any other insects on? Yeah, in different growing areas. Those guys are from Michigan, so Michigan would have their own set of critters, I'm sure, and pests. But around here, the BT works really well. Inexpensive, safe, very effective for any caterpillar-based thing. Only the caterpillar type stuff. Gardeners are the most innovative people you'll ever meet because you have to be. You really do. over time for it to work. And one of the best things you can do is talk to other gardeners. Okay, there are a couple more here that are season extenders that I wanted to draw your attention to, especially if you're in this part of the country. We overwinter spinach. So what we do is plant in the fall and late September or so, cover it with straw, and then it's ready to harvest like in February or March, depending on the year. All right, so this little green wilty stuff down here is spinach that's been uncovered. But we had a horrible cold winter this winter, too. We did have a lot of snow, and there's still snow on the ground there, January 28th. And we had spinach. I just uncovered it, but it did come out, and the leaves refreshed themselves, and it was edible. Okay, and then the next one is kale. This is my favorite success story for survival gardening. I never thought I liked greens, so I knew nothing really about them except spinach used fresh. And somebody had encouraged me to try kale, and we did. Didn't have time to eat it. It just went to seed, came up the next spring by itself with no care, and I thought, oh, we're on to something here. So I left that same kale. It went to seed again and came up, no care. Okay, this is second season. This isn't supposed to happen. January 28th, once again, look at the purple. This is that red Russian kale. And very edible, very sweet. Now, it only likes cool weather. So, obviously, and those things that have overwintered, when it gets hot, they're the first thing to bolt or go to seed. So, you've got to understand that you would want your fresh supply coming too. But to me, if I'm planning to feed my family from my garden, the old timers used to talk about the starving time or the hungry time, words like that. But that was always like March or so, late winter. It's when the things that they had in the root cellars, things stored, were playing out or were poor quality. But the garden things weren't ready yet. So it's the time of year it's really hard to get fresh food. So that's kind of been my challenge. It's like, what could we grow then? And kale is one thing that would work here for that kind of thing. Spinach works somewhat. Kale is more successful. And we took that kale and started experimenting with it. And honestly, when everything's coming on at once, it's like, we aren't really good at all of it. Sometimes I don't use things well. But we did try things like kale chips, which you could do in a dehydrator. We did them in an oven, low temperature, 10 minutes, just little leaves of kale. They're delicious and simple. Hardly any input involved. And again, you could dehydrate them and use them that way too. So lots of things that are options when you're thinking about gardening that are not traditional, like maybe you've seen in the magazines. All right, the next one. All right, and then just following up on that, when you're planting, have a plan for food storage and preservation. One of the things I highly recommend, and I'll probably come back to this, is thinking about cold storage for winter. Not necessarily root cellars, because depending on what part of the country you're in, you may or may not have access. Most people do not. And in our part of the country, the water table is so high that the root cellar was always so wet that it wasn't effective anyway. But a basement area, an unheated closet, somewhere that's cool and dry in the winter. But this was April 4th, and that was a spaghetti squash from last summer. That's a sweet potato from last summer, plus our fresh kale. So see, on April 4th, fabulous meal based on stored things. That spaghetti squash had it's just in the basement. Same thing with sweet potatoes. And then sweet potatoes, you take that sweet potato, and when you were a kid and you stuck toothpicks in it, and you put it in a jar and watch the vine grow, you grow your starts for the next year. This year we planted around 30 starts from, well, it wasn't that sweet potato. We ate that one, but another one very similar to it. From one sweet potato from the year before. We started our vines, and planted our new crop. So see, that's sustainable gardening. Now, before I leave the kale, after bragging about it, when you think about seed storing and saving, they say that kale is one of the brassicas, the kale, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, those things, like if you save seeds from them, you lose quality because you really need a bigger sampling, like if you're really saving seed, for a purpose. But if you're okay with it just coming up until it loses vigor and then you start it somewhere else, it's a great overwintering thing. Okay, next one. Start your own transplants, and it doesn't have to be fancy either. This is a Sam's Club shelving unit. I've also seen those mesh shelving units from Sam's Club used for this. And you hang, and it's a shop light, not a grow light. So this is how we do it. We start our little seedlings behind the wood stove in the winter till they're sprouted. Then we move them down in the basement under a shop light, and that thing was eventually full. That's when we just started. And then as they get bigger, and I start them in little cups, so I don't transplant them. I know that some people do, but I don't. I just never can get to them in time, so I start them in the container they're going to stay in. But then before we plant them, we harden them off, which means we expose them to the wind and sun gradually, so they start like on a front porch, and then they move out, and then they go in the garden. And even if you're purchasing transplants, keep that in mind that you might need to harden them off too, because some of the greenhouses that you purchase from have not done that. And the plant will go into shock if you plant it without doing it. Okay, so, and the other thing about transplants, I'll say while I'm here, and this is different for your parts of the country, I understand that, but for here, when you go to those stores and they have everything under the sun that you can buy transplants for, you don't really need to do that. The things you need transplants for here are definitely tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, because of the growing season, all right? And then if you want to start anything again, like also last night I put out some new cauliflower, broccoli little seedlings. You have to start them yourself because you can't find them anywhere this time of year. Here we can have a fall harvest most years. So I'm planting in faith that we will have rain and we will have a fall harvest. But if you like to do that extended gardening, you would need to start your own seeds and be prepared for that. Otherwise, like the squash, like this is actually squash and cucumbers that I did for our kids. And the ones you plant from seed come up almost as fast. I mean, you really don't gain a lot with those. And a lot of them don't like to be transplanted, really. So if you don't know the care they've had before you've purchased them, you may not want to. You may want to just stick with like the tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant. Okay, now landscaping is the next one. Now, if I lived in a suburban garden, I would really consider this. Using vegetables as landscaping. That is a kale over on that side. This is a rainbow Swiss chard. They're beautiful plants. And they could be incorporated in flower beds. They could be in containers. And then the next one is sweet potato vine. Okay, that's our sweet potatoes over there. And they looked a lot better 2 weeks ago than they look now, don't they? And this is a container that's in our town that someone locally has planted with ornamental sweet potato vine. Why not plant containers with sweet potatoes? Or why not in the front of your flower beds plant sweet potatoes? Let the vine be attractive, and in the fall you dig the sweet potatoes. Well, we need to rethink this stuff. Okay, the next one. And I'm going to leave this one up for a while because I want you to be able to copy these down. Every state has an extension office. My understanding is, or an extension service, that some states are friendlier than others. Missouri is great. And they have available free of charge these MU growing guides. And they're online. So you can copy that down and get those access to, books and books of them on any topic online and copy them yourself. So even if you're from out of state. And Texas A&M has a lot too. So write that one down. Kansas City Community Gardens is a great resource. Missouri Organics, that is a place to get compost if you're in the Kansas City area that I've just heard recommended from so many people that I thought you might want to know about it if you're local. Bulk compost topsoil, relatively inexpensive. And this last one is special. Lori Peterman, I'm going to pick on her and embarrass her here. She is the one who has put this website together. And what it is, Pantry Garden Herbs is the premier organic herb supplier in the Kansas City area. And you will see they're grown at Sullivan's Greenhouse, which is a great greenhouse and great Christian business. But they are grown there and marketed all around. And she is the website person for them. But if you have any interest in herb gardening, using herbs, that thing is a wealth of information. Everything you want to know plus some. Recipes, growing tips, all the different kinds of basil, all the different, if it's new to you, I really recommend that. Okay, and I'm going to leave that up, and then I want you to pull out those 2 little handouts I gave you. Gardening has value, good times and bad. It's good for you now. It's good for you every age. It's good for you every situation. I'm just convinced. And the thing is, you don't learn gardening in one season. So as you gain experience, production increases. And this is what, when you are transitioning from just magazine ornamental gardening to crises type gardening, these are some things that I think will help you. One resource I want to draw attention to, and again, this is kind of a new book, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to carry it, and you could probably get it at your library. Different Thinking Process. It's called Gardening When It Counts, Growing Food in Hard Times. This guy was he started Territorial Seed Company, and the resources at the bottom of that page. And what he talks about is how you garden in droughty areas. Like they were Eastern Oregon. So droughty areas, dry farm gardening. He talks about how the seeds are handled before you get them, how you can save your seed. And he also has a different approach to the intensive gardening that we also often hear about. The problem with intensive gardening is it requires a lot of water. The raised bed gardening, a lot of water. He says you spread your plants out and they don't require so much water. So I think a lot of it's regional. I really do. And I think you have to read from those books and glean what is helpful. But I so appreciate his approach because he kind of looks at gardening as more like, I'm really going to feed this family on what I'm growing. Okay, which is what I call the crisis gardening. So during a crisis such as high food prices, supply disruptions, it's important to concentrate on fruits and vegetables that are dependable, non-fussy, and adapted to your region. And that's the example I gave you on kale. That's why I think it's a good one. And non-hybrid, so you can save seeds or let them reseed themselves. I mean, that's a real advantage there. Items that produce a lot in a small amount of space, the pole beans rather than bush beans. On that vertical gardening, when Grace said that it was green beans, those were obviously a pole bean. And pole beans will produce a ton on a small amount of space. Nutrient-dense vegetables. I haven't stressed this much. I will keep stressing it more. If you are limited on your access to food, the foods you get, you want good nutrition from. So really concentrate on those nutrient-dense vegetables. And a lot of those are not expensive, difficult to grow vegetables. The greens. Collards, kale, chard. I mean, those things that we kind of shove back and go, oh, but I want my fancy pepper and heirloom tomato and basil sprinkled on my plate. Well, sure, but we also need those old standbys that we can mix with grains and get our sustenance in the winter when those fresh tomatoes and basil and heat and cold-sensitive things aren't available. Okay, and then also a variety of maturity dates and growth habits. Depending on your season, some early crops may do well, others may be damaged by drought or extreme heat. Potatoes may yield well, but corn is eaten by deer and raccoons. You know, we always grow potatoes really, really well, and this year we just grew tons of them. And it's a good thing because the ones in the top, like 4 inches of soil, cooked. I mean, they literally cooked. So you learn. And we had hilled them up. The thing we could have done, we didn't, is more mulching. But we have to buy the straw to mulch with, and it's like, most years you get by without it, and we didn't. The other thing is look at ease of storage. Some things are more perishable than others, and that's one thing with those root crops. Maybe turnips are not your favorite, but turnips are easy to store. The butternut squash, easy to store. Again, just like in a basement, like you saw the picture, like the sweet potatoes and the spaghetti squash. Those things last, yes. I spread them out in boxes. The rule on storage is always make sure they are not damaged in any way. Get your nicest product to store. Anything that's been poked or an insect has bitten, use first. because they won't last as long. But yeah, keep them there where you can monitor them if there's any spoilage so that you can get rid of them and they don't infect the others. But we just spread them out in box tops and single layer, hopefully. In basement, you could put them on shelves. It depends on the space you have available, or an unheated closet. This grandmother whose picture you saw in the one of the earlier slides lived in Arkansas, no basement, and she had an interior closet that where she stored her sweet potatoes, and she would wrap them each one separately in newspaper and keep them in a cardboard box in that closet and use them all winter. There's another book called Root Cellaring by Nancy Bubel, I think is the spelling of her last name. And it's been around a long time. They're updated versions, but that's one that talks a lot about those root vegetable storage things. If you're wanting a resource, any library would have that. Okay. The other thing where Rod and I are experimenting this year, this has kind of been fun. Natives and perennials. We're looking around saying, okay, what things have always grown here that we can eat? Because you hear people talking about, oh, you can go harvest from the wild. So we thought, well, we're going to look around and just see on our farm what we could harvest, because we don't spray, and we thought we'll come up with some stuff. Well, we had identified there were some Jerusalem artichokes, which are also called sunchokes. They grow wild in Missouri. So we found them, and bless Rod, he does these things just to be nice, but he dug it up, and we thought if we're going to live on that little root, we're in big trouble. And then we realized we dug it too early. But the thing is, when it's time to dig them, they're all died down, and you can't find them. So we thought, well, we're going to plant some. So we did at the end of our garden, the very end. The deer ate them down too, I will tell you. But they have had no care, and through all this drought, they are surviving. They've had no water at all. They're very green, and they're obviously multiplying. So what you do is, like in October, November, December, or after a frost, you harvest the roots. And then they are a gourmet food. I mean, they cost lots of money in the gourmet markets. They're called sunchokes, and you use them similar to like a potato type thing. They are more readily usable for diabetics, though. They don't have the reaction to the carbohydrate like the potato. And I don't remember the terminology, but I've read that repeated places. And they grow. They say that they're invasive. We'll have to watch to be sure they don't take over. But easy. Another thing is elderberries. People are paying a lot of money for elderberry juice or tincture of elderberries, and there's a push in Missouri because they grow wild in Missouri to develop a processing plant, actually. And that's where we first heard about it. And we thought, hey, we'll grow some. So we ordered some from the Department of Natural Resources. They're cheap, $6 for, I don't know, tons of plants. And they're growing well. And we'll see what they do. And you know what? They're in a back area. And if we decide we're tired of taking care of them, they'll just blend in with the woods. We're not going to worry about it. And another thing is like mulberry trees are something in this area, that mulberries are nutritious, and then the leaves are nutritious. So check out where you live. Departments of conservation type places will tell you, find your local resources to find out what's native and perennial. And then the other thing on crises gardening, and I've talked about these things, so I'll just touch on them. Make maximum use of your space. Vertical planting, succession planting. That's like one crop comes out, another goes in. If you have a raised bed type thing, you can manage that pretty well. It's not always fail safe because, we have seasonal issues too. But it works somewhat. And companion planting. The old, how the Indians used to have the corn stalks with the beans and squash and the pilgrims, and, you see those stories. That actually worked. There's validity to that. So that type of thinking in your planting. And that's one thing that this Steve Solomon talks about in here, too. Some of the natural things that grow well together. Extending season, we've talked about that. We've talked about starting your own transplants. And then make maximum use of your resources. And again, I think this is something you have to see where you're at. What is available to you for mulch? Do you have leaves? Do you have straw? Do you have something else that would be effective? What's available to you to build your soil? We clean out a neighbor's horse stalls because we have a lot of garden space. There's no way we could come up with enough compost for that. And so we clean out their horse stalls, and it works well. We put it on in the fall, till it in, and that's our fertilization for the next year. Capturing rainwater, huge. And all of our outdoor watering comes from rainwater. Incorporating edibles in landscaping, and you saw that. Learning to save seeds. Okay, that's our next topic. And then, I've been reading this, it's a listserv of growers that sometimes is just over the top, but they have some wisdom. And what they've been talking about recently is they've had shortages of varieties that they're interested in. So when they got ready to order their seeds, like in January, they couldn't get certain things they wanted. So they have started ordering a year ahead of time and always keeping a year's supply when they're doing it commercially. Okay, so have any of you saved seeds before? Lori, I'm just learning, okay? Our great-grandparents, they used to do that. When I read you the account of the people coming in the wagon train, they brought their own seeds with them. We are the ones who have had the privilege of just getting whatever we want, wherever we want. And before even thinking about seed saving, and what I did on that was just got the very basics, okay? There's a seed saving book back there that's like the reference book. But I just wanted to draw your attention to a few things. So on that next page you have, first priority is seed storage. Those seeds that you take good care of can be stored for several years. Terry was talking about freezing them. Yes, they can be frozen extended periods of time. The thing with freezing, though, be sure they're dry. They've got to be really dry. And when you pull them out, it's wise not to pull them all out at once. Like he said, he divides them up into like 1-pound containers. Well, you might even want smaller than that, because when you pull them out, you need to let them come to room temperature so the moisture doesn't, the condensation doesn't get into them, and then open it and handle them carefully. And the other thing with storing seeds is it's temperature ranges that are a problem. So keep them cool. Okay, so instead of it's better that they're consistently one temperature rather than take them out of the freezer, leave them out, forget for a couple of weeks, and then put them back in, or back and forth and back and forth. Or I know you've seen people, and I'm not going to ask you to raise hands, but you've opened your seed packet and you've left it on the counter or on the refrigerator or in the garage, and something like that. And that's the worst thing to do. Keep them cool, keep them dark, keep them moisture free. Okay, some other things. The standard is 70 degrees with 13% moisture. For every 10-degree decrease in temperature, along with 1-degree decrease in moisture, seed viability doubles. Okay, so what that means to me in real life, this is what I do. Take those seed packets. I put them in little Ziploc bags just so in case any little seeds fall out, I'm in control of them. And then I put those down inside a glass jar with a lid on it and put them in the back of a downstairs refrigerator. So they're cool, they're dark, they're doubles packed. You could also put them in the little plastic tub type things. There are lots of ways you could do it. But keep them cool and keep them dark, keep them moisture free. Always label carefully. Anything else in that seed storage thing? Questions about that? Okay, seed saving. Are you clear with the definitions of open-pollinated, heirloom, hybrid, and GMO? No? Okay. These are the basic. You're going to hear that tossed around a lot. Open-pollinated and heirloom. Basically, they're the same thing except heirloom are older. Okay, they're the varieties that were produced usually more than 50 years ago. Open-pollinated are the seed can be saved and it will be true to type. Okay, so this is something I want you to know about this. Some vegetables are basically always open-pollinated. Green beans, peas, lettuce. Okay, so it's not an issue with those. Easy to save seeds. It's just a simple thing to do, and that information is down here. So don't let that throw you. Just because you're buying off a rack somewhere that, those seeds may or may not have been taken good care of, but just because you're buying off a rack does not mean it's a hybrid or doesn't mean, if that's an issue to you. The real distinction there is that hybrids have been developed selectively, so the next generation won't reliably produce itself. So like if you're planting a hybrid tomato plant and you save those seeds, well then the next year's crop could look like, it could look similar, it could look like one of the parent plants, but it's not going to be a consistent crop. So for large scale growers, they cannot take that risk. They've got to have a consistent crop. All right, a lot of money went into the hybridization, so technically those seeds should be a lot more expensive. They're really not. And this guy who has been, he had to own that Territorial Seed Company, is very much involved in the seed businesses. He says sometimes we're buying one, thinking we're buying one and we're getting the other. That some of that seed handling is pretty sloppy anyway. So basically that's the difference, the distinction though. All right, so if it's important to you that you've open pollinated, you can avoid hybrids because they'll always be followed by little letters, symbols, that will let you know they're hybrid. If it doesn't say anything, it's open pollinated generally. And then the heirlooms are the old open pollinated. So when you hear about heirloom tomatoes, that's used loosely again, but typically it's the older varieties that are also, well, they have to be open pollinated. Makes sense? Now, the big issue that's coming up now is the GMO, genetically modified seeds. And, all I have heard is negative. So I went and did some research on it to find out the positive to it, too, to try to get a balanced thing. And personally, I'm not finding a lot of positive. I'll tell you, when I first heard about it, my dad is a farmer, and the farmers in an elevator area near where he sells soybeans, Monsanto brought a lawsuit against them because they said that they were saving back seed and replanting. And they were embroiled in the midst of a lawsuit over this GMO thing because Monsanto had produced the seeds, soybean seeds, which were Roundup ready, which meant they could handle spraying and it would not kill the plants. So it didn't require cultivating, okay? So evidently they thought some farmer held seeds back, which may or may not have been true, but they were bringing suit against them. So that was kind of a negative there. And as I've looked, basically what they're doing is they're using the advancement in genetic engineering to alter the genes in seeds to make them resistant to certain things, okay? So do we know long-term effects? No, we don't. We do know that when you go to a farmer's market and all the sweet corn looks perfect and has no worms, it's GMO sweet corn. And people are excited. They're like, oh, this looks so good. So you've really got to educate yourself about it and what your expectations are. We don't know long term, and that's a debatable thing depending on who you ask. I think the biggest problem I have with it is it places control over seeds in one company. So it takes away the idea that we're producing and using seeds. And with crops like corn that cross-pollinate so easily, if someone next to you has GMO corn, yours will be. See? So some things like green beans aren't such an issue. Some of those plants aren't such an issue, but corn really is an issue. And it gets harder and harder. It's even hard to get non-hybrid corn that's true because it's so easily cross-pollinated unless you live, far away from somewhere else. Okay, I'm needing to draw this to a close, and I guess I want to leave you with one more thing, and then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and do some more on using the food you've stored, and I will be around to answer questions. But one thing I want to tell you about, if you're trying to save seed, and this is on the page, but I can answer questions later about it if you're confused, that some things like the melons, the squash, spinach, okra, beets, they exchange pollen, which means you need a large sampling. Some of them say as many as 200 plants to really get a good sampling of seed. So you're thinking, okay, so I have a little garden. How am I going to save seed to next season? This is what they recommend you do, is start with the highest quality seed you can buy, okay? Grow your own seed for one generation. That first generation, they'll be okay. The vigor will be fine. Save those. And then if you take care of those seeds should last for a decade, and you just draw from that supply and plant from it. Okay, so like let's say you have a melon that's wonderful, and you save the seed from it. And that first year you're safe. Save all those seeds, and you get a bunch. I mean, you really get a bunch. Take good care of them. And then from that supply, each year, take some out. And then eventually you have to replenish. Now, that's talking seed vigor. That's talking people who are really saving seeds more commercially or to sell or for, but I think it's important to know that because that's a question that comes up. You're going, ooh, what am I going to do? And in real life, that's something that might work for you.